freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 468 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme is Decoding 2A Journalism, and our guest is John Petrolino. John is a U.S. Merchant Marine officer, a writer, a firearms instructor, and the author of Decoding Firearms, an easy-to-read guide on basic gun safety and use, and it is easy because I read part of it.
Welcome back to the show, John.
Cheryl, Danny, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Absolutely. And if you ever hear us at the end of the show, when we say, darling, this is our new love word, our love language that we share with John. So you
That's
are always
correct.
in our mind.
Darling.
Darling, absolutely. So, darling, please tell us about your book. When you were first a guest on this show several years ago, it had just come out, but this is a timeless piece of work. So I'm not just saying that because I'm holding an autographed copy, but tell folks about your book.
Yes, so Decoding Firearms, an easy-to-read guide on general gun safety and use, is a 266-page book on 101 level firearms use. And I'm not going to say it has everything under the sun, but what I tried to do is put as many things in the book for somebody that's uninitiated in firearms, somebody that's new to guns, or maybe even somebody that's looking to brush up on firearms, and give them a general overview. And of course, the book isn't designed to be a substitute for training, because I don't really feel that anything is a substitute for in-person training. However, I do think that the book, serves a very important purpose to get that knowledge across to prospective gun owners or new gun owners alike, and get them up to speed with what they might encounter once they do have a firearm in their hand and they're, working with, say, an instructor or on the line.
John, I think there's a great book for that. So you're a new person, you just bought a gun, you get the book, you read up on it. Then when you go to the range with an instructor, you're going to be a little ahead of the game.
Right. And that's something that I found with, different students. And I do the firearms instructing thing, and it's on the side naturally. It's not like I'm running the John Petrolino Firearms Academy where I'm putting tons of students through the, paces. There's only so much that I can do. So the firearm training is something that is a passion. It's something that I enjoy doing. What I have found is, a mixed bag of students. Now, I wrote the book because I was looking for materials to give to students. And this was a writer to a class that I wrote. And this was a time period when the NRA, and I don't know if you remember this, the First Steps pistol class got, kind of phased out. And I was like, well, I was looking for something to fill that void for training that's not going to be like a full 8, 9, 10-hour class, but I didn't want something that was just a 30-minute thing. So I put together a class that would run for a couple of hours, and it was set up to be also an evaluation of people's knowledge and their current status. So if I had a student that was like, well, I've been, shooting my whole life, well, let's see what you've got and let's go through it. That doesn't mean that they're spot on, but that also doesn't mean that they need to have every single tiny detail spoon fed to them. So once I got done with that curriculum, I said, well, I wanted to make a handout so that I could give to my students so they could take it home with them. And this is something that I call the coffee table university. And what's the coffee table university, you ask, Danny? The the coffee table university is when you come home from class with John or whomever, you take your materials and then you put it down on the coffee table. And then that's going to be something that you pick up and then you look at later on, maybe your significant other, maybe some of your children, whomever. And this is information that hopefully would be there as like a legacy to, hey, I took this class, I could look through this material and it'll jog my memory. Maybe it'll get me to, have more questions. Maybe it makes me want to do more training. So once I got through listing out all the things that I wanted in a pamphlet or a handout, I ended up with a 266-page book with over 115 original illustrations and photographs. So it was a monster of its own. So now, what's funny is after I made the book, which is clearly not just a handout, it's a standalone product. I did make a handout based on the book. So I had the class and the book was based on the class, and then the handout for the class is based on the book, but I was able to recycle a tremendous amount of material, and it worked out probably even better than I could have imagined in the big picture.
Fantastic. I encourage everybody to get a copy of this because, it's not like you have to start at page 1 and read through. You can, pick and choose which chapter and which bit of information you need to drill down on. Am I correct about that?
Right. And I try to, since it's not necessarily a narrative, you can cherry pick some of the sections. Now, there's a lot on safety in there, a huge emphasis on that. One of the things that there's not a big emphasis on, say, is like gun cleaning. So a whole section on gun cleaning, that chapter is not going to be a chapter that you write home about. And the reason is because you go through just the basic minutia of that. But that's something that I want you to turn to your manufacturer's manual to get their guidance on. So in the book, I probably say, reference your firearms manual probably 100 times in the text, because I think it's that important. And unfortunately, and however you want to look at it, some of the firearm manuals, truth be told, aren't that great, but some of them are fantastic. And I think it's an important place to start once you have a new firearm, or if you know you're going to get a firearm, download that manual and read about that firearm before you even get it.
And before we move away from the book and you tell folks how they can get their copy, I love that in your Appendix A, top of the page, Constitution of the United States. Because if we don't have the Constitution and we don't protect the Constitution, then we won't have any guns to clean or, enjoy out at the range or go hunting with. And the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, which is so important because, we are involved in the Second Amendment industry. We are concerned and involved with helping to prevent suicides. I appreciate that, John.
Yeah, and I did put, and you and I spoke about this years ago, was I put in the front as well as a standalone section right there, all about suicide prevention right in the beginning of the book for you to get that information. And this is before the STAR hotline. What is the STAR? There's a suicide prevention hotline that's is it 611 or what's the number? I can't remember.
I think it is 611. I
I think
just
there's,
lost the page.
I don't know
but-
for, but this, I would have added that resource had that been available at the time,
Yeah.
but I do have the suicide prevention hotline number in here
Oh,
because
yeah.
I would hate to think that somebody used my book to get the knowledge and skills that they needed to end their lives, and I think this is a very
Exactly.
important thing for us as gun owners to continue to show that we are involved in this and that we do care. And it's not just a dog and pony show. There's a legitimate care and concern in that topic.
Absolutely. Did I cut you off?
No, no.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something.
I think the book's great. I mean, somebody who's brand new and wanting to get a firearm, maybe doesn't understand that there are so many different types of firearms and they all work different. And
Absolutely.
so what you pick out, I would get the book before I'd get the gun.
Yeah, I like that idea. And how do people get the book, John?
You can get it on Amazon, so it's available there. It's available also as a Kindle copy if you want to go that way, electronic copy, and it's in full color if you go Kindle. So the book that you're holding there is monochrome, so it's only just black and white. I never released a color copy. I didn't think that it would really be worth it. And then if you don't want to buy it off of Amazon for whatever reason, if you go to the Gun for Hire Woodland Park Range website, they sell it online on their webpage. And there might be a couple of other online retailers that aren't Amazon where you could get it. And if you're in such a bind, then you absolutely want to get a copy of the book and you don't want to buy it from Amazon and you don't want to buy it from somebody else, you could always email me at john@thepenpatriot.com and we can work out a deal.
I
What
love
if
it.
they wanted it autographed, John?
Well, same. I can't guarantee expeditious service, but I can guarantee good service. So you can always email me, john@thepenpatriot.com, and we could figure that all out.
I love that. And some of the reason that you maybe can't guarantee expeditious services because sometimes you're doing your other job, right? You're a merchant marine, as we were saying. You're gone for spans of time. And that really takes me to my next question. How does someone who is a merchant marine end up being both blogger and media figure of the year?
Right. So 2022 was a good year to me. And San Diego County gun owners, I went out to their Second Amendment dinner. It's colloquially called Gun Prom.
I love
And
that.
yep, so Charlie Cook and I went out there with my family and we went to Gun Prom. And they actually awarded me this Media Figure of the Year award for some of the work that I had done over the last year or so. And then, later on that year at Gun Rights Policy Conference, the Second Amendment Foundation did name me Blogger of the Year, which was also a gigantic honor and to get. So, but how do I go from Merchant Marine to that? I don't know if that's really the order of things because I'm like sitting here thinking about this, and I've been writing, pretty much longer than I've been merchant marining, So my interest in writing started when I was in high school. So to get to where I am today, and the two-way blogging and journalism that I write, that is built on years of putting out work, and that's built on years of, and believe it or not, a lot of creative writing. My original discipline was poetry. So if you were looking for me in the mid 2000s, you would find me, at poetry events from mid 2000s, probably upwards to, 20, probably 2011 or so. 2012 is when I kind of started phasing myself out of the poetry scene. And that had a lot to do with just of some of the people that everybody's welcoming, everybody's inclusive. They say, hey, we want you, come and read your poetry. But the minute that you say something that goes against the fray on what they think is right or wrong, forget it. So like I quickly understood that my actual ideas and ideals were not embraced by hardly any of these people. And it's like there's like a few outliers that I've dealt with that, like, okay, these guys get it. But other than that, I had like frothing at the mouth, angry people that just don't want to hear anything about the Second Amendment. And it's kind of funny because well, it's not funny, it's sad and it's telling, and I'll just leave it at that. But I had been writing for years and years and years, and probably in 2015, I think it was, I answered an advertisement for a website that was going to be doing looking for writers to write content and Second Amendment related content. Now the website, it's still out there. I actually ultimately have never ended up publishing with them, but I did connect with them. They sent me out to write a story. I wrote a story, and the story was like 6,000 words, which is ridiculous. That's like crazy amounts of content, total overkill. And when I went to go ahead and, push that over to them, I sent it to them. They ended up ghosting me. And like, there wasn't even like, hey, this is too long, this is too that, this is whatever. They just ghosted me. So I'm sitting on this story, and when I wrote the story, I mean, I went up to Woodland Park Range and I grabbed an interview with Anthony Calandro. I went up and grabbed an interview from Alexander Rubian. This was a well researched, very large article, and I'm like sitting on. I'm like, now what do I do? And that's when I realized that Ammo-Land News. At the time, they were headquarters in Jersey. I'm like, oh, these are a bunch of Jersey guys. And so I reached out to Freddie Reel. I ended up on the phone with him and I explained to him what the deal was. And he's like, well, I'll take a look at it if you're not able to place it. And I said, well, it's long, so, understand that. And we gave the other company an opportunity to respond, and they never responded. So he said, forget it, take it, Freddie. So Freddie looked at it. He says, it is long. But he said, I'll publish it. And I was like, cool. So now I'm like high-fiving myself and screaming from the mountaintops that I'm a published guy. I got an article published, and that excitement is great. So I'll never take that away from anybody. Like, I think it's really awesome. But it's like I had this article published, and then from like 2015 to 2020, I spent time building on that. And I had a bunch of things published at Ammo-Land. Nothing too crazy, but we're talking about like every couple months, every month or so, something's getting out there. So I also ended up putting some work out at the Truth About Guns. And so then I want to say probably also Bearing Arms. That's when I reached out to Cam Edwards, was in 2019. Cam Edwards ran an article of mine in 2019 about the Cheeseman case, which went up to the Supreme Court and got denied certiorari. And then 2020, things really exploded. I put out the book, and that's when Ammo-Land came to me and said, hey, we want you to actually, we'll pay you to write for us. We've got some projects for you to do, and we'll bring you on as one of our writers. So yes, I'm still a freelancer, I'm a free agent, but now I've got my byline where Ammo-Land News is letting me hang my tile. And things kind of just spun out of control from there, because by early 2021, I had work going out at Bearing Arms, and then Cam invited me to come over there. Same thing. I can work for them on a freelance basis. And then after that, I think I picked up The Truth About Guns, and then also now Shooting News Weekly. That's another publication. And granted, I put most of my work I do put out at Bearing Arms. But I do hold bylines at all of these places, and I try to, distribute work as much as I can. So how do I go from Merchant Marine to, Blogger of the Year and all of these things? I guess calluses, right? You got to put the work in.
Yes.
And I went from having like maybe in 2020, and I'm patting myself heavily on the back. I'm like, I've got like 30 articles published, like up to 2020. And I'm like high-fiving myself. Here we are now, 4 years from then. I think I'm sitting on the neighborhood of 800 articles.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in that neighborhood. So a lot of work. And, once you pull your finger out of the dike and you let the levee break, it did. And so what's really cool is I spent all that time building up to, like, let's say 2020, to become this like an overnight success where,
Yeah.
okay, my work is being actually looked at now, and it's being read, and it's being taken seriously. Now from then, it took me, 20 years to get to that point. Now from that 2020 date to now, like, we have 4 years. Well, let's back up. 2 years from there, I'm a blogger of the year and a media figure of the year in a 2-year span. And now here we are in 2024, and I'm sitting on a pile of 800 plus articles. And, I'm actually very grateful for all of the opportunity that I had. But if you look at it, it was just, you just put the time in and you keep
Yeah.
working and try to, be as good as you can.
I love that. And I think it's inspiring. I hope it's inspiring people out there listening that, they have a story to tell, that they can, just begin, right? I mean, you were already a writer of sorts. I don't know if you wouldn't have called yourself a journalist when you were doing poetry, I suppose, but that bridge over to doing journalism, you traversed it. And you say you were excited when you got published. I get excited when I see a headline, right? And I'm like, well, is this going to be a trustworthy story? Let's see what kind of bent is there. And I see that it was written by you. I'm like, okay, all right. It's already vetted because you're not a politico, you're not a partisan guy, you're just about here's what happened, and give us some supporting quotes or facts. And I really appreciate that, John.
Well, and I thank you, and I appreciate that observation. And my work has been a mix between, kind of that opinion-based editorial work and covering hard news or featured stories. So I've worked very hard to transition that from the opinion heavy to the, hey, this is journalism with a capital J, and
Mm-hmm.
this is news. And
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that and still maintain my, integrity and everything like that, because when you get down to it, it is supposed to be about the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and covering the Second Amendment, though, it makes it very easy to do that because our views, if we're going to look at this from an activist standpoint, because who do I work for? I work for the Second Amendment. That's who I work for. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I hold, bylines with Bearing Arms and all of these other great publications, but the Second Amendment is who I work for. So in essence, it's the people that I work for. It
Mm-hmm.
just so happens that covering this is actually kind of easy because our views generally prevail at being correct.
Yes.
Um, and there's not lying and there's not horse trading that has to go on. And the statistics, which if everybody listened to the statistics and everything, they prove that what I'm saying is correct.
Boy, you're
Yeah.
you're right on that. And it gets needlessly complicated out there. The entire Second Amendment in our Bill of Rights is 27 words. It's kind of hard to, screw that up. But yet here we are, the amount of time and money and energy that the other side puts into trying to complicate those 27 words. That right there is telling.
Right. And well, and here's the other thing. I guess we have tyranny to thank because if we didn't have tyranny, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
So
We'd be
true.
happy.
It's
We
so
we
true.
would have never met. Why would I have met you if we weren't outside of my book Decoding Firearms?
Yeah,
Okay, but would we have become friends?
Right.
Like this is next level. So
exactly.
And
Well, we
John,
wouldn't have had this show.
yeah,
We this show was born out of me needing to better understand and articulate why I believed what I believed. So I reached out to subject matter experts, stuck a microphone in front of their face, and you're one of them. So I think that's interesting that it really is because somebody else overreached is why, we are here doing what we're doing today.
right. And John,
Sorry to go ahead.
we've known each other several years now, but I've never asked you where's your passion for firearms come in?
that's a great question. And I would say that I wouldn't say that I've been surrounded by firearms my entire life, but at an early age, I was introduced to them. So we're talking like young, like, 8, 9 years old, young, introduced. So, I mean, I guess if you're looking at the big picture, that kind of is my whole life now because I'm over the hill. So,
You're not as
uh,
over that hill as we are, so you're still
I
good.
can see you from where I'm standing. So don't worry. Um, and so I guess I spent my life surrounded by firearms. Um, I did grow up hunting. That is something that I did do. Um, in the scouting program, I was involved in, the rifle shooting and shotgun shooting, stuff like that. College, I ended up on the collegiate, small bore, rifle team at the academy for a season. And what took me from there to here, I didn't really become a handgun owner until the latter part of the 2000s. So I was, under 30, over 21, so in there somewhere. And what really did it, I think, that galvanized, there's a couple of things that galvanized it for me. So firearms as a self-defense tool, and why this is incredibly important. When Hurricane Sandy hit in 2012, it was like anarchy in New Jersey, and we were out of power for about a week. And that was the first time that I said, okay, I'm going to take this firearm that I usually have locked in a safe with the ammunition separate, in a locked box, and I'm going to take that stuff and I'm going to put it together in my home and have it ready to roll in my sock drawer, because I didn't have any other options. At that time, I was, childless, and, just about ready to get married. I don't know if I don't remember when Sandy hit. I think Sandy hit right before I got married. Yeah. So we have adults in the house, and that was the first time that I said, okay, having a firearm to protect us is an important thing, while people are getting stabbed at gas stations in New Jersey,
Wow.
when all of this was going down. So maybe that's what flipped the switch in my head to, and if that answers your question, Dan.
Mhm.
And the other thing that really stuck with me too, and I guess they converged. Both of these things come together, right? When I was 21 years old, I went down to the police station, Middletown, New Jersey, and that's where your favorite governor, Governor Phil Murphy, lives,
Oh
in Middletown.
yeah.
He
Talk
lives right
about him
up the
all the
street,
time.
not too far, a couple of miles away from the Middletown police station, is where the carpetbagger in office lives. And because he's originally from Massachusetts, and they do tyranny great in
Mhm.
Massachusetts. Just
Mhm.
remember, they have a history of hanging people from the end of ropes that they called witches. So, and
Right.
that's no different today. Massachusetts is still like that, in my opinion. Went down to the police station, and I talked to the gal in the police station and said, "Hey, I'd like to apply for a permit to carry," and she said, "You can't." I'm 21 years old, like, I'm very naive, right? I'm like, "What do you mean I can't?" I said, "Of course I can." She says, "No, you can't." I said, "It's my constitutional right. Like, what do you mean you can't apply?" And you know what she said to me? Was she said, "Not in New Jersey, it's not." And I said,
Wow.
"Okay." I said, "Give me the paperwork." She's like, "What?" I said, "You can't tell me that I can't apply. There has to be paperwork, and you're going to give it to me." So she
Mhm.
gave me the paperwork to apply for a permit to carry. And I took it and I threw it in the trunk of my '83 Cutlass Oldsmobile Supreme. And that's where it sat until I got rid of the car and then threw out the paperwork, because I'm like, I'm not going to apply. There's no way I'm going to get it. But that's when I realized that
Yeah.
the government really is against you, especially New Jersey's government is really against the people. And that stayed with me for years and left a very bad taste in my mouth for years. So now, if you fast forward from that age to me becoming an adult proper, and where all of that converged, it all kind of just comes together and clicked. And said, this is a civil liberty, and it's important. And I guess those are the two galvanizing events
Mhm.
that really made me freedom minded. And again, this isn't like I was surrounded by firearms for the most part for my whole life, but it wasn't until after Hurricane Sandy that it really, the light bulb went off. And I was
Mhm.
a gun owner myself at that point for however many years, but it was then that I was like, okay, we went and got the lock boxes to be able to put the quick access safe and whatever like that. And then slowly it turned into, what I am today, I guess. maybe,
Mhm.
maybe a monster, if you ask my wife.
Well, if we ask Phil Murphy, who says the Constitution is above his pay grade, which, I could actually take that in a semi-positive
No,
way.
you can't.
I can, and here's why. Because it is above his pay grade. It's not for him to do anything with other than to support, right? But he meant it as,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
you
It's
know,
above his pay grade. Like, okay, we're not gonna. And that was the thing in New Jersey. We had a legislator that went on the record. She said, "We just passed the laws. We don't care if they're constitutional. We'll let the courts figure it out." But
And these people keep getting voted
it's
in. I'm sorry that it makes me so angry when I hear stuff like that.
right. And and we're the turkey that keeps on voting in favor of Thanksgiving. That's what New Jersey kind of is. But I don't think people really, I don't know. It's a weird mix. And New Jersey's a strange state, especially for a blue state. It's a very strange state because
Mhm.
um, a lot of issues that you have in other deep blue states you don't have in New Jersey. We've got our own very special problems. So the gun ownership thing is something that you actually have a decent amount of gun owners. We have like 1 million gun owners in the state. So if we showed up and voted,
Right.
we would run it, you know?
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
How does this, how does, New Jersey was one of the original 13 colonies.
Yes.
How does it go from that to this
They
in
were
a
the
couple
first to
hundred years?
ratify the Bill of Rights. That just
And in your
statistically.
state constitution, correct me if I'm wrong, we were just recently interviewing Teresa Einiker, who is a friend of both of ours, and she's with the NJFO, if I'm saying
Yep,
that right. And
CNJFL, the Coalition
she's
of New
one of
Jersey
our
Firearm Owners. Yep.
women for gun rights.
Mhm.
She said, if I'm quoting her correctly, that in your state constitution, there is no protection for the right to keep and bear arms like there is in Arizona's state constitution. And I'm thinking, you guys were so close to the beginning of all of this. You know, how did we miss that step?
So we were the first to ratify the Bill of Rights, but we didn't ratify the Second Amendment. That was one of the amendments we did not ratify. So New
Mm.
Jersey never wanted a Second Amendment. Number one. Number two, Teresa is correct. There is no Second Amendment in the New Jersey state constitution. But what it does have is a section where it does say something to the effect of that we have the right to defend or protect our property and ourselves, but it doesn't outwardly say. There is a case there that we do have, in fact, Second Amendment protections, but it's not as explicit as the Second Amendment. Not that our Second Amendment is explicit enough for the gun grabbers to say, oh, clearly that's a right. Um, but if I was to make an argument, I would say, and this is not saying against Teresa, what Teresa is saying is correct, but I would say we do have these rights. It's just the way it's written, and it's far too open for interpretation. And this is something that, and I don't have the verbiage in front of me of what is the actual line in the state constitution, but I have looked at this multiple times. And I always thought about sitting there and reading that to, say, Governor Murphy, or reading it to our legislators or our attorney general and say, what do you think that means, that we have this ability to defend or protect or whatever the verbiage is? In your opinion, how do you do that? The extension to that is via arms. So I would
Right.
say it's an umbrella where it would protect the whole right, but clearly it doesn't in the Socialist Republic of New Jersey.
Well, John, it's the same with our Second Amendment. They say that shall, and they twist that around, so they twist it to fit their narrative, and that's it. And it's a shame because, you know, the, our our country was founded with firearms, and we protected ourselves from England with firearms. And
Mhm.
for a state like that to shy away from the gun part of it is puzzling to me.
It is. And this is why we end up with people like Governor Murphy. But we do need to move on because
I know.
I have a question for you about a really unique project that you have put together. Because we've been talking about how you're a blogger, we've been talking about how you're a journalist, and in those senses, we're thinking about things that you're writing. But you just put together a video series that it has to have been a labor of love because I can't imagine the hours you put into it. Um, to help commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Second Amendment Foundation. Talk to us about that project.
Did you watch all three segments, the full hour and a half? And if you say no, I won't get mad.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, so you got the whole picture.
Yes.
Um, in September of last year, I had this great idea. I was like, the Second Amendment Foundation is celebrating their 50th anniversary next year. I want to do a series on this, right? I'm like, I had this brilliant idea. I said, let me do like a 5-part series, like 5 articles. And so then I spoke to some of the, the leadership at SAF, and we chatted about this, and like we were all in accord, high-fiving each other. This is a great idea. And it really was a great idea. And even when it came to time, I said, holy cow, the anniversary is approaching rapidly. So we have like, you could say something in September, and then August, like, because August 26th was the official 50th anniversary for SAF. You say it in September, it's like, I'll, gladly pay you Tuesday for a
Yes.
cheeseburger today, right?
Yes.
But what I ended up doing was a tremendous amount of research on SAF, and I'm like, well, let me interview the movers and the shakers. So I said, well, if I'm going to do an interview, let me do video as well, and I'm going to release the video. And instead of just releasing it as like Zoom or StreamYard or whatever, where it's just us talking, I said, let me cut it up and try to tell a story. And so what I did was I had this idea that it was kind of like a Christmas Carol of SAF. And the idea was the early days and the past and the inception, and then the present day, and then the future and beyond, right? And that was my vision. And then I would write editorial around that. So to complicate it, it's a 3-part video series with a 5 parts articles, and mash it all together. So what I ended up doing was I had, oh God, hours of footage and conversations, and it was great. So I got to talk with Alan Gottlieb quite a bit. Julianne Versnell, I interviewed her, and Dave Workman, and I kind of put that in the category of like the old guard. So the inception and present, and then for present and future, I interviewed, Lauren Hill and Adam Kraut and Bill Sack, who came on over the last few years, kind of clearly to be the bridging team to take SAF another 50 years, right?
Mhm.
So that was the idea. And so I had these hours of footage, and I smashed it into the videos that are out there. You can get them. They're on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube page, The Pen Patriot, and there's part 1, 2, and 3, and it's lays it all out and talks about the beginning, present, and the future of SAF. And of course, for the editorial portions, I did the same thing: future, present, and then past, present, future, as well as 2 standalone articles where I write one article just about Alan, and then one article just about Adam. So to kind of end cap everything. And it was a labor of love. Like, I really enjoyed doing the series. And once I did the interviews, so I had the interviews done in April, and then I also did some other research that I had, like a book to read on SAF when I think it was their 30th anniversary or something like that. They put out a history of SAF. The history of SAF book that I read was so old that it was predating McDonald, and Heller.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool to look at the history of the history,
Yes. Yes.
and how they really were trailblazing in
Mhm.
the gun rights arena. So once I had all of that together, I worked on the video series first, because I figured once I get that down, I'll be good to go, and then work on the editorial after that. And that's pretty much what I did. And it took me the better part of 3 weeks. That was what I worked on primarily for about 3 weeks on my spare time. And
Spare
it took me
time.
about, yeah,
Define that.
it took me about that long to
Mm.
throw it together, and I'm pretty pleased with the product. The
Yes.
the the only thing that I think could have brought another element and dimension to it is if I had professional equipment, and if I was with the people in person. Sure, I would have been happier with the quality of the product, but overall, and same thing with editing. Like, I only have so many editing skills and software, but other than that, like, I think that the series, each 30-minute, because it's about 30 minutes each. I think it comes to an hour and a half total when you add up all 3 parts. Each piece kind of speaks for itself, but I also think that together they do pay a very good homage to SAF and the work that they've done, because I think the work that they've done is tremendous.
It is and continues to be. And how do folks watch this labor of love project that you put together?
Yep. So you go to YouTube and you can check it out at my YouTube page. So my YouTube page is The Pen Patriot. So I think it's youtube.com/@the-pen-patriot, I think is the URL, or Pen Patriot. I can't remember if there is or there isn't an at. I think there's an at. But if you look up The Pen Patriot, if you go to thepenpatriot.com, there should be a link to the YouTube page there. And if you really cannot find it and you're looking for it, you could email me, john@thepenpatriot.com. I'll give you whatever you want.
Well, and I'm also looking at johnpetrolino.com. Is that another avenue to?
JohnPetrolino.com is thepenpatriot.com. So penpatriot.com reroutes you to johnpetrolino.com.
Very good.
That's, yeah.
Making sure I was looking at the right thing.
You are.
Fantastic. Well, I absolutely love that you did that. This one of the things, Dan and I, as small business owners, that we don't do well is celebrate or commemorate, right? We're just always moving forward, go, go, go. And so when you have an organization that's been as impactful and important as SAF, what the cool kids call it, right? Or Second Amendment Foundation, to have people help with that part of the story, that's invaluable and priceless. And I appreciate that. So something else, we're sitting in the studio on September 24th of
Right.
2024.
Yep.
And this is the part of our interview where we need to kind of have those doodle-doo music,
the time warp. Yeah.
the time warp music come up, because we're speaking about two events that are coming up, but by the time this airs, they will have happened. So however we dive into this question, as long as we have, kind of like prefaced that for the viewers and the listeners, coming up, it's actually a few days from now when we're sitting here in San Diego, California. We will be participating in an event called Amm-Con on the Friday, and then the Saturday and Sunday will be Gun Rights Policy Conference, GRPC, all of which, going back to Second Amendment Foundation, or SAF, they have brought together for folks to come and learn and network and workshop. And so you have a starring role in both events, Amm-Con and GRPC. So just talk to folks, because these are annual events and they will happen again in 2025. So just talk to us about those two events, John.
Sure. So the Gun Rights Policy Conference is actually, it's co-presented between Second Amendment Foundation and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. We don't want to forget that there's
That's
the two
true.
organizations. One's a 501c3, which is SAF, and the 501c4 is the CCRKBA. And they're both very important organizations. And one of the things that I want to point out too is Citizens Committee actually predates the NRA ILA by, I think, 2 years. So Citizens Committee, the lobbying arm here, has been around longer than the NRA lobby that we know of as the NRA. So Alan Gottlieb and his organizations have been doing tremendous work, more than 50 years. So that's, I think, Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms is 52 years. So they celebrated their 50th anniversary 2 years ago. But both of the organizations, SAF and CCRKBA, they host the Gun Rights Policy Conference. And basically, this is a place where, your activists and advocates can come together to learn from each other, and also hear about what's going on, around the country in gun rights, and where's the fight and how's the fight going. And I know that some changes happened last year, right? So they started phasing out the shorter speaking events where I think speakers were talking maybe 5-10 minutes. Now they've done less speakers, but a broader amount of time. So you get like maybe 15 minutes to speak, unless it's something else that's, a little bit larger than that. And you're going to get to hear from the movers and the shakers in the gun rights arena. Now, Amm-Con is kind of like a little sidecar to GRPC. Amm-Con stands for Alternative Mass Media Conference, and this was started by Paul Lathrop, and it was predicated on a conversation that Paul had with Gail Pepin. Is this correct? Right,
Yes,
if you recall.
absolutely.
And so what had happened was Gail had gone to a podcasting event where podcasting was starting to really become a thing. And when other people spoke to her about what the actual genre of the podcasting that she was doing was, firearm and Second Amendment related stuff, they kind of treated her like a pariah and, recoiled. And, which stinks, is because part of being a journalist, going back to that, is talking about facts. And I guess, yes, when you're doing podcasting, there's a lot of opinion and there's a lot of analysis. And that's what makes this fun, is it's a conversation. It's not just a statement of facts, right? But nonetheless, they made it clear that this wasn't a home for your kind, right?
Mhm.
So eventually, Amm-Con was something that Paul Lathrop and Gail, I believe, and whoever else was involved at the time, launched this conference. And they launched it to kind of be a sidecar to GRPC. And their idea was, let's go and get anybody that's interested in this. We'll hold it the day before GRPC, and then like the same day that there's the evening reception, and give everybody an opportunity to do this. All you got to do is come out a day earlier, but not really, because if you're trying to get there for that reception, you're just coming, for the entire day. And eventually it became a program that SAF has now completely embraced, is now part of the program, I believe. And this is where you can go and you can learn from other new media types, the bloggers, the writers, the journalists, the YouTubers, and anybody else that's kind of working in this arena about what they've learned, what's effective. And also it's going to be coming from a pro-freedom, pro-Second Amendment standpoint.
Mhm.
So my talk is actually going to be at Amm-Con. I'm going to be talking about taking the leap from blogging to journalism and bridging that gap, and how do you go from opinion to news, and why it's important, and how that can serve you, and then also by extension that's going to serve the Second Amendment as well. And that's not to say that opinion and editorial isn't important. It's very important, but this is
Mhm.
just talking about things from a journalism standpoint, from a factual basis. And one of the things that stuck in my mind, and I didn't put this in my presentation because I couldn't find the direct quote, but something that Cam Edwards said to me years ago. And I had written something disparagingly about the leaders, in so-called leaders in New Jersey.
Like what you did there.
Right. So
Mhm.
I wrote something disparaging about them, and he said, I'm going to edit this and I'm going to kind of make it a little bit nice. And what he said to me was, when you write your work, especially this important work that you're doing, and some of it's important, um, pretend in your mind that this is going to be read in a courtroom, and that
Mm.
this is going to be evidence in a case. And it like shook me to the core, and it really galvanized some of my thinking about, okay, if I am in fact working on something that is that important,
Mhm.
we've got to make sure that this is journalism, and we've got to make sure that it's ready to roll, so that if an attorney grabs it, they can cite that in their brief, or somebody else that's making an argument can grab it, and that bias is minimal to maybe not present. Um, and that's kind of what my presentation is about, is talking about that.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, and there's a couple other little side quests we'll talk about in there as well. And then for GRPC proper on Sunday, I'll be doing a talk on the systemic racism in New Jersey's permitting system. So, and this is something that, and you're shaking your head, Teresa Einiger, she had brought this up. She had tossed me that hat tip a couple of weeks ago. What was that, on Thursday the episode rolled out, I think. So
Mhm. Mhm.
she talked about a series of stories. So I think she caught the one definitely, but it was talking about the black denial rate for permits to carry in New Jersey.
Mhm.
Um, I've probably written since April about 15 plus articles all about the permit to carry issues that we had since this dashboard of information came out. So I'll be talking about that to the best of my ability in 15 minutes or less.
Yes. Yeah.
John, that permit thing in New Jersey just really puzzles me. I mean, the only denial that should be received is if you are a felon.
Mhm.
That's it. Anyone else should be able to get that
Right.
license. And it, why? Because you have a store, you can have it, or why? Because if you have this, you can have it. Why not? If you're not a felon, we have to approve you.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and that's just the case for constitutional or permitless carry. And I think that's a direction that, maybe 10 years from now, this is something that we're going to be talking about. Maybe I think that um, the final state that'll voluntarily probably enter into permitless carry might be North Carolina. It looks like that's probably the last state where culturally it's going to
Yeah.
be grabbed and ran with. The
Yeah.
other states are going to be a battle, but you're also looking at, a lot of these states are the Bruin response states. You have those 8 states that are always at the headmaster's office, like you guys again,
Yeah.
like what's
Yeah.
going on with New York, New Jersey, California, etc.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's you're spot on, Dan.
Fantastic. Well, we do need to wrap up. We are out of time, but just to punctuate what we were talking about with these events is if people will go to saf.org, so it's saf.org, and click on the header that says GRPC. There's everything there. The Friday event, which is Amm-Con, the Friday night reception, Saturday all day speakers, and then Sunday about a half a day of speakers. And this is all done for free. And that is
For
the
free.
truly mind-blowing part of that is that I think this is their 38th or 39th year doing this.
I believe so. Yeah, I think so. 38th or
And
39th.
It's sad to
and
me
such
because
a
these people that are listening right now,
Mhm.
they
They're gonna miss out.
they missed out. You're teasing them.
Well, they
Oh,
gotta prepare for next
they're
year.
going to have like free diamond ring giveaway and candy, and you get a limo ride to and from, and all this stuff, and you don't get to
Well,
come because it's over.
there's going to be a rewind, so this should be televised electronically. I believe you're going to be able to access this stuff on YouTube, so you can catch the presentations. You
Yeah.
won't be able to catch the follies and everything behind the scenes, but if you want to get the information and a feel for what the speakers are like and whatnot, you'll be able to watch that. And I believe Amm-Con, is that going to be televised as well, Cheryl?
Not live streamed, but I believe we're gonna have the speakers, yes, posted later afterwards.
Okay, so that's
And
perfect.
it
Yeah.
so is important to get the information, but there is nothing more precious than showing up in person, the chance meetings in the hallway, having drinks after, in the evenings. And so I do encourage people to make a plan for 2025. Watch for it. It travels to different cities every year. And if there's any way you can take planes, trains, or bicycles or automobiles, you should get to a GRPC.
And the behind the scenes with Charlie Cook and John, priceless.
Shenanigans.
And I'm going to have some questions for you too,
Yeah.
John, over this interview. I mean,
a
you
lot
mentioned,
a lot of people have questions, but keep going.
well, yeah, but you mentioned that you and Charlie went to the prom together. And I
We
just
did.
I have questions about that. I've never got to go to a prom before. Did you drive him there? How did you get to the prom? What did you do? What did you wear? We're going to talk about all this in San Diego.
We sure can. Absolutely.
So funny. Thank you so much, John Petrolino. We appreciate you. Thank you for all you do. We will be seeing you very soon in San Diego. And
Yes, ma'am. Thank you
tell
guys
folks,
very much.
tell folks how they can reach out to you again one more time before we go.
So the best place you can find me is at my website, thepenpatriot.com. You can check me out over there. I'm on Facebook as The Pen Patriot, on Instagram at jpetrolino III. I also launched a new product and travel review site. We didn't even talk about that. It's called The Square Reviews. It's thesquarereviews.com. So Cheryl, you guys could check that out and we could talk about that the next time we're together. And do
Definitely.
visit SAF.org and CCRKBA.org. Send them some donations. These organizations are doing God's work, and a lifetime membership is $150. So maybe join SAF this year and Citizens Committee next year. But the work is getting done, and they are doing tremendous stuff across the whole country.
I love it. Thank you again so much, John Petrolino.
Thank you, guys, and you've got some praying to do, Dan.
I do.
He does. We'll get to that. Thanks,
Yeah,
John.
bye-bye, John.
Bye-bye,
See you.
darling.
Wow, he's always fun to have on.
He is. You can tell he watches the show. Right? He's referencing all our little things
Speaking of
about
show, we're running
leaders.
way late.
We so are. All right. Well, let's get wrapped up. Thank you again to John Petrolino, to all of our amazing viewers and listeners. If you want to go back and watch any portion of this video or any of our videos, you can find us on YouTube, Gunstreamer, the Opslin smartphone app. When you go to these platforms, the way that these platforms know that this information and these subject matter experts are valuable is when you like it, when you share it with your friends who are also interested in this, when you subscribe so that you stay in the know, and when you hit the notifications button so that you are the first to know. Please do all of those things. If you want to listen to the audio only version, go to our website, gunfreedomradio.com, click the on demand tab, and
Binge listen to your hot content.
darling, there's the darling, right? If you want to see the links and bios and products like books that some of our subject matter experts have written, then go to the guest tab, and man, there is a huge database there of subject matter experts, and when you spend time there, we don't hate that.
Speaking of products,
Yes, American made products on American soil that support American jobs. You, instead of shopping at these big box stores that use every one of your dollars to diminish your freedoms, you can cut the cord on those companies by accepting this invitation from Dan and I to join patriothousehold.com/GFR. And that piece is important because when you do shop there for your shampoo, for your laundry soap, for your snacks, for whatever it is that you would normally go to these big box stores for, we get a small portion. And the Second Amendment Foundation that we've just been talking about, they get a small portion of every dollar you spend when you go to patriothousehold.com/GFR for Gun Freedom Radio. Now, we have some other great friends who are making a product here in America, and it is called Locked In Grip. It is a liquid shooting sports chalk, and it is made for shooters by shooters to give you a better, safer grip. And if you're a competitive shooter, you know how important that is. And when you want to be safe, you know how important that is. So lockedingrip.com. One last thing. If you ever do tragically, unfortunately, have to defend your life in a self-defense situation, and you've used a tool of any kind, whether it's a firearm or a knife or whatever it is. Chainsaw. Okay, that's interesting. You are going to need legal representation. If you go to our website, our homepage, gunfreedomradio.com, you scroll down, there is a tab there that says Attorneys on Retainer. Check them out. We are clients. Thankfully, we've never needed their services, but we sleep better knowing that we are their clients. Attorneysonretainer.com. Check it out. All right, we got to get on out of here. Dan, what are we going to do until our next show?
I got some praying to do, I guess.
John Petrolino even pointed that out. We are going to pray for our leaders and our representatives. And how about the ones that we're a little frustrated with?
We're going to pray for them because we're going to vote to get them out.
Okay, fair enough. We're going to pray for our nation. We're going to pray for our leaders, and we're going to pray for each other. How about that?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week, and God bless.
Bye-bye.